proper incentivization seems to be a bit of the theme, right? So looking at how, let's say, as an example, if you're, where the future could be in a few years, to Carl's point, if you're at home at the end of a long day on your couch, the near future could be that you'll say, hey, Siri, play me an episode of Game of Thrones where Daenerys Targaryen doesn't die and instead takes over the Iron Throne, right? So right now that technology more or less exists around AI, 3D rendering, this sort of stuff, right? But it doesn't exist in a compliance way. It doesn't exist where Emilia Clarke will be getting a payment for the use of her image and likeness. And also the quality of the technology isn't quite there yet. So investing into, for example, ways to help ensure both carrots and sticks to help make sure that artists get properly incentivized involves legal solutions, technology solutions. It could potentially involve blockchain and or cryptocurrency micropayment solutions where, to that point of the viability, if it's a working class family that's using this technology, they're not going to be paying thousands of dollars for that, but they might be paying a couple of cents here, a couple of cents there, and you add that up times millions of active users, and that all of a sudden becomes significant payments. But to have a way to send those payments back to studios, to content creators at scale in a way that doesn't cost more to send than the money that's actually being sent to them, those are potentially fintech solutions, blockchain solutions, and related. But speaking of making sure that the artists get properly incentivized, so Zephani, from your perspective around some of this, I mean, thinking through a couple of these related themes, we're seeing, for example, increasingly artists, say, Ashton Kutcher, Jay-Z, Jessica Alba, being more involved in some of these, investment funds, having a bit more of a say over the narrative is, I think, something that someone said about this. And then also, I think you mentioned something about how basically the most recent negotiations around the actors' strike were really kind of still a work in progress. So what are your thoughts around basically how to be getting actors more involved and what are your thoughts around how that relates to, say, investment funds, but also how it relates to still the work that needs to get done around making sure that artists are properly compensated?
I think I can start at the basic things that a lot of actors complained about with the most recent contract, because there were things achieved. Before that, there was nothing in place in terms of protections for actors and other creatives around the use of AI. So this was kind of like the precedent case for creating protections. So, basic things like you have to get an actor's permission in order to create a digital replica of them. It has to be used for the specific project for which you got their permission. If you want to use it for something else, you have to get permission again. You have to pay them fairly. If you use the digital replica, you have to pay basically for the fair amount of time that it would have taken a human actor to do that work. You have to pay them for that while using their replica to do the work. The areas in which there were kind of gaps is at what point are you asking for permission? Because people complained about, at certain stages of the casting process, it can be a little bit coercive because, we're in an industry where the demand, for work is a lot lower than the supply. And so there's very much that, that thing of, it's very easy to just move on to, the next person that they were considering if there is a no about XYZ that they want to do with you around AI, around this project. And so there were a lot of actors talking about, you need to regulate the point at which, a studio or a network is able to basically say, we want to create a digital replica of you and we want to use it for XYZ. If it's too early on in the casting stage, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. In a lot of ways, it, basically makes it so that certain people who are not going to say yes just don't get the work. So that's a gap that needs to be filled. Another such gap is, talking about paying an actor fairly, for the estimated amount of time it would have taken them to do the work that the replica is doing. Who decides? And this is why, we're coming back to, if there's systems in place, if there is, money behind, and a collective of people and, intelligent lawyers who are concerned primarily with answering these questions in a way that is beneficial to the people who are actually doing the most important work, then we're starting to address some of those challenges. So it's all like very new ground. There's a lot of moving parts, but things are happening. I was just talking today with my manager, who was telling me, some A-listers are going into their agencies and having digital replicas made because that's a thing that's already, it's like, it's there, it's on file, and whenever it's needed, this is how we're going to negotiate, and this is how much they're going to need to pay to use it. In those cases, it's a little less of a threat because they are already, established to a certain degree, and their representation is the full 9 yards. But when you go down, a little bit below that and below that in terms of, name recognition and all of that, then there's, who is making sure that, all of those questions need to still be answered. And so I think that's where, and the more that things progress, it's kind of something where you need to catch it early, because the further down you go, the less powerful, the more replicas are out there, the more permissions have been given for things that, maybe permissions should not have been given for, the less powerful the unions are, the less powerful, individual actors are. So I think in the early stages, to have, a fund, to have a collective of lawyers, to have money behind ensuring that, first of all, the gaps in the regulation are filled now, and that there is power behind enforcing those regulations and making sure that people are paid fairly, and that, it's standardized who decides and what exactly the metric is for deciding what is a fair amount of work that a human actor, would have done versus the work that the AI did. All of those questions, being dedicated to answering them in the right way and also enforcing those answers is very important.